What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the COTACast. My name is Brian Bermudez, and I'm the host of the Craft of the Air podcast, the aviation podcast that really just expands your knowledge. And each and every episode, join me and my guest as we explore the untold world of aviation together. I'm so glad that you guys are tuned in for another episode. You know, it's been quite a while since we've done an episode, admittedly. And hold on, I'm just trying to find my... There's no editing on this. You know, it's been quite a while since we've done an episode of the COTACast, speaking to a lot of people in aviation, my students, colleagues, and, you know, the main theme that we have going on really is these aviation maintenance strikes that have been occurring for over a month at this point with Boeing and Textron Aviation. And, you know, this is coming to a critical point. I mean, it was from the very beginning, but when we look at what's happening here, we have a sustained strike, and we have a talented workforce that is fed up. They've been pushed to the limit, and really in this episode, I'll have what they're having. You know, we have strikes, and other stories that we really take a look at here. We have strikes, we have injuries, and in one case we even have lives that have been lost. You know, aviation mechanics are really at a breaking point, and for years these highly skilled workers, they're known as engineers worldwide, but they're mechanics, simply just mechanics here in the United States. These mechanics in the United States, they've been underpaid, undervalued, and in some tragic cases forgotten. You know, but now everything is changing, my friend. The tide is turning. We have unions demanding for fair treatment and an industry facing a workforce shortage that it's clear. Mechanics hold the future of aviation in their hands, literally. You know, today we dive into these stories making the headlines and uncover the truth behind this crisis brewing on the tarmac. First things first, a word by our sponsor. Today's episode of the COTACast is brought to you by Craft of the Air. Is your aircraft grounded due to maintenance delays? Feeling lost in the world of aviation solutions? At COTA, we understand your challenges. Craft of the Air offers efficient and reliable maintenance services to get you back in the air faster. Whether it's scheduled maintenance, AOG calls, or thorough inspections, our team of experts has you covered. Need guidance navigating complex aviation tasks? Consulting by COTA provides tailored advice and cutting-edge insights, ensuring your projects take flight smoothly. COTA is more than just consultants. We're your personal aviation assistants. Gonna have to check out that website. Visit www.craftoftheair.com. Again, that is www.craftoftheair.com. Check out that website today. Discover everything Craft of the Air can do for you. Craft of the Air, our craft is of the air. So now we dive into it. You know, you think about this, you know, mechanics, right? Engineers everywhere but here in the United States, and they're literally our last line of defense between you and a disaster in the sky. You know, and yet despite their expertise, they're paid less and often asked to do more, and in some cases even asked to risk their lives. You know, and what's the truth behind all of this? You know, the airlines, the corporations, they only start caring when tragedies begin to make national headlines, when lives are lost. You know, if that doesn't shake your view of the industry, nothing will. Nothing in this episode will. You know, in this episode, we break down exactly why mechanics are fighting back, you know, and why the industry really can't afford to ignore them any longer. You know, going back over, and this is months and months ago, but just to kind of set the foundation here, WestJet, Canadian national carrier, and the union representing them, AMFA, had a bit of a fallout over the summer. Back in June, WestJet mechanics, they followed through with a strike notice, and this initiated a work stoppage on June 28th. It lasted till June 30th, about 2 days. But over that weekend that these maintenance engineers took this strike, there were more than 800 flights that were canceled as the airline grounded 130 aircraft at 13 airports across Canada. And this was disrupting travel for thousands of Canadians. You know, This is, WestJet attributed the strike to, quote, a lack of clarity from the government, end quote, and they criticized decisions made by the Canada Industrial Relations Board, which allowed the strike to unfold during binding arbitration. Now, a tentative agreement was reached between both parties, and AMFA, the Aircraft Mechanic Fraternal Association that's representing WestJet maintenance engineers. The TA offered an immediate pay increase of 15.5%, and it gradually increased over the next 5 years. It's good that it was resolved in a good amount of time, that it didn't drag on like our Textron and Boeing strikes. But really, this is, in this brief but significant strike, WestJet mechanics, they sent a clear message. They're not just looking for better pay. Really, mechanics are looking for better recognition, of these essential roles that they play in airlines operations and companies' operations. And while that strike was short-lived, its impact was massive. Grounding planes, leaving passengers stranded. And let's not forget that while this tentative agreement seems to, provide some immediate relief, the real question remains: are these incremental wage bumps and these benefits enough to retain and attract talent in an industry that's really struggling to keep up with the demands of modern air travel? This isn't just a bump in the road for WestJet. It's a sign of what's coming across the aviation sector worldwide. As mechanics, pilots, ground crew, they continue to fight for wages and working conditions that match the reality of the rising costs that we're facing as Americans. Airlines are going to have to wake up to the fact that labor unrest isn't a passing phase. It's a new norm, really. Speaking of new norms, a Boeing strike has been unfolding for over a month and a half at this point. The union representing Boeing mechanics isn't backing down. They're making that crystal clear, and Boeing's attempts at damage control is really not flying anymore. The International Association of Mechanics and Aerospace Workers, or IAM, is adamant. Meaningful negotiations must happen at bargaining tables, not in the headlines. Boeing made a calculated move, okay? And this was last month, and they unveiled what they called their, quote, best and final, end quote, contract offer. In this contract offer, they were touting 30% wage increases, but here's the thing. The IAM already dismissed that figure because these mechanics were requesting 40%. 30% that Boeing was proposing as their best and final offer was already short of what these mechanics are requesting. And after voting down an earlier proposal that only had a 25% increase, these mechanics have made it clear that Boeing's latest play won't be enough to get them back to work, and it hasn't. Boeing's leadership faces an escalating crisis. They're already struggling to repair a reputation after this catastrophic 737 MAX door plug blowout. Plagued by quality control issues. And speaking of quality control issues, it just so happens the NTSB, they've issued an urgent warning to over 40 foreign airlines about the potential rudder controls issued on Boeing 737 aircraft. This follows a February incident involving a United Airlines flight where the rudder pedals became stuck during landing, and this raising serious concerns about a jammed rudder control system. The NTSB has identified similar incidents, 2 foreign operators in 2019, and this is linked to faulty rudder actuators. The NTSB believes that there's 271 potentially defective parts that may have been installed on aircraft operated by foreign carriers, still with 16 still in use by U.S. registered carriers, right? Boeing immediately informed the operators about the issue in August, but the NTSB chair criticized the FAA for not acting sooner. The FAA has since committed to further testing and discussions with global aviation authorities. Yeah, this is just adding to the quality control issues for Boeing. Not just specific, just coincidence that this one's for the 737. It just so happens that they all are recently. You know, the company can ill afford a strike right now. This is what we're getting at. 30,000 plus mechanics on the picket line are vital to keeping the production running at Boeing, you know, even at a reduced pace. You know, as Boeing is battling a crash crunch, you know, the union representing these mechanists, the IAM, they've blasted Boeing's decision to publicize the offering, that 30% best and final offer. They've blasted Boeing for publicizing the offer before negotiating it, calling it, quote, a blatant show of disrespect, end quote. And it is. According to the union, the message from its members was, you know, deafening, you know, woefully inadequate. You know, amidst all of this, Boeing's decision to furlough tens of thousands of Americans, U.S. workers, amid the strike is really a sign of how high the stakes have become, my friend. The move includes freezing hiring, cutting pay for non-striking staff, really a desperate attempt to preserve cash from Boeing. You know, but this strategy is really only fueling the resentment of a workforce that feels undervalued and overburdened, man. Come on. Let's not mince words. The strike is a watershed moment for Boeing, you know, and the aviation industry at large. When you think about it, the mechanics' demands, they go beyond wages. You know, this reflects a deep-rooted frustration over corporate greed. And you know what? Rising living costs for Americans. The erosion of workers' rights. You know, and while Boeing hopes to ride out the storm by tightening its purse strings, you know, the growing unrest suggests that this battle is far from over. You know, as we wrap up the Boeing saga, you know, remember, this isn't just a corporate hiccup. You know, it's a breaking point, man. Boeing struggles with debt, safety scandals, and now this massive labor dispute exposing this crumbling infrastructure of an industry that's already being pushed to the edge. Its workforce is being pushed to the brink for a very long period of time. Mechanics are fighting for more than just raises right now. You know, they're fighting for survival in an economy that's left them behind. Let's think about that for a second. You know, and Boeing's refusal to meet their demands head on, it shows just how disconnected the leadership has become from the realities faced by those actually keeping these airplanes in the sky, man. It's not just about Boeing. This is an industry reckoning with its own contradictions, man. You know? You go from one strike to another strike. Textron Aviation. Been on strike for not just a couple of days, not for a couple of weeks, over a month at this point. Back starting in September of September of last month. Nearly 5,000 mechanics. All right, 5,000 mechanics in this case. Local members from the local 774, District 70, International Association of Mechanics and Aerospace Workers. Now, these members at the Textron Aviation Wichita headquarters remain on strike after the expiration of the current agreement. That was back on Monday, September 23rd. Now, members overwhelmingly rejected the company's latest contract offer, and they voted to strike. Members have been in negotiation with Textron Aviation for months, and while both sides remain in contact, they have mediators that have been contacted, and the talks could potentially continue on for weeks. You know, the strike with Textron has the potential to significantly impact Wichita's economy. Nearly 5,000 workers are vital to that community. Local businesses and services could feel the impact of these workers that are striking, their absence. And the International Association of Mechanics and Aerospace Workers is one of North America's largest and most diverse industrial trade unions. They actually represent 600,000 active and retired members from aerospace, defense, airlines, railroad, transit, healthcare, you name it, automotive, right? What does it say about an industry? When you look at it as a whole, what does it say about an industry that's so quick to push the boundaries of aviation, yet just so slow to acknowledge the foundational role of its workforce? Yeah? It's not just a strike. It's much more than a strike. The value of labor in modern aviation is coming into play here. Really, when you think about the workforce and what they are subjected to, shift in, shift out. If Textron's leaders are indeed an industry as a whole, they don't wake up to the realities that they're facing, or wake up to the importance of those who keep the world aloft, their world of aviation aloft. It's so much that these mechanics have dealt with for such a long period of time, and we're just starting to see it materialized. Staying with the troubles in aviation, and this one is a sad one. We had a maintenance tragedy, and this is going with this same theme of just mechanics reaching the breaking point. On August 27th, back in the summer, at 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, a tragic accident occurred in Delta's Tech Ops facility in Atlanta International Airport, and it left 2 mechanics dead and another one seriously injured. The incident occurred during a routine tire disassembly task, and this was in the wheel and brake shop when an aircraft tire had exploded, struck the 2 mechanics, and initial reports suggested that the tire removed from it was a Boeing 757. It had not been fully depressurized before the team attempted to take it apart, and that led to that fatal blast. This one, this tire explosion is a chilling reminder of just these risks that aircraft mechanics, engineers, they face on the daily basis. Delta's maintenance teams, they work diligently behind the scenes to ensure that those aircraft are safe and efficient and ready for flight ops. I work with many colleagues of mine that work in Delta, all professional guys, very good guys, and it's tragedies like this that make the media. It makes us examine us as professionals in the industry. It makes us examine, our careers and what we do with our lives and how serious that may be from one shift to another. This incident is really, it illustrates to me that, even these routine procedures that mechanics can do 100 times every week, they can have catastrophic outcomes when safety measures are not strictly followed or critical steps are overlooked. Delta community is really left grieving, as the accident really underscores so much more that's happening in aviation and the stresses that are placed on these aviation maintenance professionals' shoulders every night, every shift. In the aftermath of that tragedy, the pressing question really must arise. Are the current safety practices sufficient to protect the very people responsible for keeping our airplanes safe? For now, Delta must grapple with this loss. While the aviation world looks to learn and prevent such incidents from happening again, those closest to those two mechanics and the family members, it's a different ball game. Look, in closing, when we look at all of this, it's clear that the aviation industry is at a crossroads, from the Textron and Boeing strikes. There are still certainly opportunities for, growth and recognition for those who, keep aircraft flying. But, man, with the Boeing strikes and the tragic loss of those mechanics at Delta, the reality really becomes stark. The sacrifices made by those on the front lines of the maintenance personnel actually fixing our aircraft, they're often overlooked. And honestly, they're often overlooked until crisis forces us to confront them. Mechanics, engineers, technicians, whatever you want to call us, they're not just essential. They're the backbone of aviation. And I'd say that for too long, our value has been underappreciated. Our voices left unheard. But I'll say this now, with these strikes, the tragedies, and the really slow steps towards progress in the industry, it's really time that the world starts to, recognize aviation mechanics, engineers, technicians, their worth. This is no longer about isolated incidents, my friends. This is about a systematic shift that is long overdue. As you, our listeners, continue to follow these stories, I urge you to remember that the human hands that keep these machines in the sky, and this growing need for real change in how we value those that maintain them, it must happen. The future of aviation really depends on it. When you ask somebody, or when someone asks me, what do you do for a living? I fix airplane. Well, what do you mean you fix airplane? Many people will never have any idea what a typical line shift for an aircraft maintenance professional will entail. The stresses, the multitasking, the amount of just logic sense that you have to have in order to complete one of those shifts is remarkable. And when you include all the factors that go into this, working night shift, working in the middle of the night, working in the elements, cold, hot weather, working in confined spots, multitasking, having to keep track of 3 different things at once, checking manuals, checking references. When you look at all of these things, you can start to see how some mechanics or engineers may feel undervalued. No one ever thinks to ask about the mechanic that fixed the aircraft the night before, but everybody is very quick to say hello to the pilot. It's a selfless job. That about wraps it up for this episode of the COTACast. Thanks for joining us on this episode, guys. Need help with your aircraft? You're going to have to schedule your free consultation at www.craftedtheair.com. Again, that's www.craftedtheair.com, and learn everything Crafted Air can do for you in aviation. Got a question or want to see the latest aviation insights? Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube using the hashtag COTACast. And don't forget to rate and review the COTACast on your favorite platform. And until next time, have a fantastic and safe day, and we'll be seeing you soon.